Hello, welcome back to the Barrett channel today for another video. This one is a live excerpt from the recent podcast we did with Amy from Blondie in China. It was really good fun. This topic in particular, we were talking about sort of the more interesting culture differences between Chinese and our sort of Australian and UK cultures. It was quite an interesting conversation, so stay tuned. Hopefully you enjoy.
Dating's a funny one here because if you watch the dating programs like back in the UK, it will be like they will ask questions like, "Oh, has he got a nice butt? Is his body? Is he fit?" All this kind of. Here in China, it's like, how much money does he earn? Does he own a house? Has he got a BMW or a Mercedes? It's all like financial based questions here, isn't it? It's like,
it's so fun. It's so funny.
You've probably been into the park in Shanghai where they go on a Sunday afternoon. You get all like the parents who are kind of hawking their kids.
Oh,
and you
my
get
gosh,
these they're like resumes or CVs for the kids. It's like, I need, my son's wife needs to have a Shanghai hookah and needs to have at least 20,000 RMB salary a month.
At least 180 centimeters tall.
And it needs to be a hookah in a good area of Shanghai, not anywhere in Shanghai.
Yeah.
And then there was some, right? They will offer like huge sums of money. Oh, if I can find the right candidate for my daughter, I will give you an apartment worth, millions of yuan and stuff like this. It's so bizarre here.
I think just from our Western standpoint, where that doesn't happen in the UK or Australia.
Absolutely not.
I don't know, at least that I see in the park, and it's just like I learn so much every day about this new and different culture, and I have to remind myself not to judge from my Western standpoint, because it's never okay to judge another culture based on your own cultural values. But it's still sometimes I walk around and I'm like, that's weird, but not judgy, but that's different to what I'm used to. And that's why I love China.
I think that's the point. It's not so much it's weird, because to them it's not weird. Like a few years ago, I was in India, right?
Yeah.
And as you know, most marriages in India are arranged, So now to a Western culture, that's like super weird that somebody, sometimes they only meet maybe twice before they marry. Yeah. But then I got talking to this girl who was actually my project manager, but we went on a sort of leisure day trip with the company and stuff. And she was saying, but we find it really weird that, Westerners date a number of people before they get married. Just, I can't get that into my head. So it's weird from our perspective, things we see in China, but from Chinese, they don't think that's weird. And that's a very interesting thing. I see some foreigners will come to China, they go, oh, they're stupid because they do this or they do this or they do this. But if that's what you've grown up with, it's like, for another example, like in China, many younger people, they graduate and they get a job. They send a fair portion of their salary back to their parents every month. Now to a Westerner, we think, wow, that's strange, but it's not strange then, because that's how they grow up. They know that that's what's expected of them.
And also, it's come from thousands of years of tradition, filial piety and the concept of respecting your parents has literally been in existence for thousands of years in China. And the way that Chinese do things, for example, I know it's just it's one of my pet peeves when some of my friends come to China and the first thing their remarks about China is, I don't like the toilets and I don't like, the spitting. But China has been using toilets like that for so long. And I think it's a fair point that they are a lot cleaner than Western toilets.
Actually, they are more hygienic. You get a lot of Chinese who will actually squat on a Western toilet because they think it's unhygienic to sit on the seat. So, and actually, if you look at it from a scientific point of view, they probably are more hygienic. It's just that Westerners find it difficult because we're just not used to that squatting,
And different doesn't mean it's not right. And that's what I try and tell my friends and family when they come to China. Just stay open-minded. You're going to see some stuff that isn't what you're used to, but don't automatically go to a place of negativity because
absolutely. I just want to pick up on the spitting as well. So I don't see a lot of that at all in Shenzhen. When I lived in Guangzhou, I saw much more of it. Now, I'm much older than you two, and I remember growing up in the UK when I'm sort of in my teens. I remember everybody spit. But over the years, they had public information that this is not a good thing. And I think maybe in another 15, 20s, because if you look at a lot of the younger generation here, they're generally more educated. A lot of them have been, to the West and seen there. So eventually it will phase out here. But I think socially, China is still, somewhat behind Western countries in some of their social things, because economically they've moved at this massive speed. Just in 30 years they've done what took Western countries maybe 60 or 80 years. But some of their social things haven't kept up with that speed.
Like it's at the moment I'm taking an online course at Harvard.
Oh,
it's
cool.
It's a free online course. Anyone is open to do it. A huge number of Ivy League universities have opened up all of these free online courses for people to do during these lockdown times. And I've been doing a series of ones about Chinese modern history. And I'm learning about like China even just 100 years ago, like China's last dynasty ended in the early 1900s. Like that was their like traditional imperial kind of China. Like that was only 100 years ago. Like so up until very recently, there were people around that were born in imperial China under a under the Qing dynasty. Like it's so much social progress, and you see all of those. What do you call them? Like different black, white. What do you call those? Contradictions. Yeah, contradictions. Yeah. You've got westernization versus traditional culture. You've got, respecting your elders versus wanting to move to the city and lead a more urbanized life. Like there are just so many social things happening in China. And I find it personally very fascinating to see how China is dealing with like this crazy speed of development.
And this is why I think there's certain things in China, because there's this massive difference between generations. So in England, although my parents, things were different, there's not been such a change from their generation to my generation. Whereas in China, there's this massive chasm of difference between, the generation of 25, 30 years ago to people now who are 25, 30. I speak to many people in their sort of 20s, and their parents lived in very, very poor times. And now, sort of 25 years on, things are so different. And I think the social side of it needs time to catch up. So I think that's why you do see these things like, I noticed a massive difference from Guangzhou to Shenzhen. So in Guangzhou, I feel there's a lot of people with money, but not as much education. So you get a lot more sort of pushing on the metro and that. You come to Shanghai, much more people wait in line here because it's a much younger population. It's a much more highly educated
and westernized as well.
Yeah, more sort of, stick to the rules. Whereas Guangzhou, I think there's a lot of older people who have become very wealthy, but they don't have that education. They think, I don't need to wait to get on the metro. I can just push to the front or things like this. I see much less of that in Shenzhen and also Shanghai. And I think that's because the sort of younger generation. I mean, I feel Shenzhen is a very kind of young society because
Shenzhen is so new, like one of the newest cities. Like I think that Shenzhen celebrated 30 years.
That's right,
since it opened up and the reforms. Like while I was in Shenzhen, I was researching a lot about how it went from being like this random fishing town and suddenly opening up and becoming this place of like, I don't know, like a free trade zone, one of the first.
That's right, Deng Xiaoping
in China. And it's just crazy. Right. And also like all of these foreigners who came to Shenzhen right in the beginning and ended up settling in Shenzhen. And you still see some of those. There's one bar in Shekou in Shenzhen that was developed. It was the first Western bar in Shenzhen, actually maybe potentially in China. And it was from one of the oil riggers that had come to work in Shenzhen like 30 years ago. It's so interesting.